We also need to talk about two special triangles that we'll be using a lot in trigonometry, a very lot in trigonometry. The first one comes from the isosceles right triangle shown on the left. An isosceles triangle means that it has two sides of the same length. In this case, the two sides that are the same length are the two legs of the triangle. We are going to say, let's just suppose that the length of each of these sides is 1 unit long. What would the length of the third side be? Well, let's use the Pythagorean Theorem. The Pythagorean Theorem says that 1 squared plus 1 squared has to equal the hypotenuse squared. Well, 1 squared plus 1 squared is 2, so the hypotenuse squared is equal to 2, so the hypotenuse has to be the square root of 2. So you should recognize this as a special triangle, 1, 1, square root of 2. What are the angles? Well, if these two sides are the same length, the angles opposite them must also be the same size. So if these two angles are the same, and this is 90 degrees, the other two add to 90 degrees, so they each have to be 45 degrees. So we have here what is called the 45, 45, 90 special triangle. And the ratio of its sides are 1, 1, square root of 2. Now they could be any ratio of that, so we could also think of this as x, x, square root of 2 times x. So they could be any ratio that is the same, but it's easy to remember 1, 1, square root of 2, and then we'll be building on that later. The second special triangle comes from this equilateral triangle. And remember, an equilateral triangle means that all three sides are equal, therefore all three angles are equal. Since there are three angles in a triangle that add up to 180, if we take 180 divided by 3, we get 60. So all three of these angles are 60. Now, for the sake of argument, I'm going to say that each of these sides is 2. And the reason I'm going to say 2 instead of 1 is I'm going to be dividing one of them in half. So I'm going to drop a line right down here, a perpendicular line. Since this is a very symmetric triangle, it divides this triangle exactly in half, which means this side right here is 1. So I have a triangle here that is half of my equilateral triangle. Notice that it has an angle of 60. It has an angle of 30, and it has an angle of 90. So this is my 30, 60, 90 special triangle. Now, what is the length of this third side here? Notice this is one of the legs. So using the Pythagorean theorem, I would say 1 squared plus this leg squared. So 1 squared plus the leg squared is equal to 2 squared, the hypotenuse squared. So I'm going to have to, that would be the same as saying 1 plus the leg squared is equal to 4, or the leg squared is equal to 3. So this third side here is the square root of 3. When we take the square root of both sides, that is the square root of 3. So if I were to draw this triangle separately, and I'm going to kind of come down a little bit farther, I would have a triangle that has a 60-degree angle, a 90-degree angle, a 30-degree angle. Opposite the 30-degree angle is the smallest side, 1. Opposite the 60-degree angle is the square root of 3, and opposite the 90-degree angle is 2. I want you to notice that 2 is a bigger number than the square root of 3, because if I square 2, I get 4. If I square the square root of 3, I get 3. So 1 squared is 1, square root of 3 squared is 3. Those add together to give me 2 squared, which is 4. It's very important that you remember which side goes with which angle. Now often we will draw the special triangle this way with a 30-degree angle down on the lower left, and then we would have one on the opposite side here, opposite 30, and then we would have square root of 3 on the base, and then 2 would be the hypotenuse. So we have this as a 1 square root of 3, 2 triangle. We could also call it x square root of 3x, 2x. So any ratio that has the same, any sides that have the same ratio would also be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. We are going to use these two triangles, the 45, 45, 90, the 30, 60, 90, and their related sides over and over and over. These are also things you need to have memorized and know without hesitation.